Hi, I'm Nicola Humber, founder of the Unbound Press and the Unbound Writing Mastermind. And today I'm in conversation with Anna Sansom, who is a writer and researcher who specialises in women's wellness and sexuality. So, hi, Anna.
Hi, Nicola. Nice to see you.
Yeah, and you. So Anna is a member of the current round, the 2018 round of the Unbound Writing Mastermind. So we've been working together over the past few months, which has just been a wonderful experience for me to have Anna as part of the group. But I wanted to have this conversation and talk some more about kind of writing in general and your writing process, Anna. So can you tell us a little bit more about your writing and what stage you're at with your writing right now in terms of the book you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So I had written a couple of fiction books before joining the Unbound Mastermind, but that was it was several years ago, and my writing had sort of stalled a wee bit in the meantime. But I had this idea for a book that I really wanted to write, which is a creative non-fiction book. So it was a little bit outside of my normal sphere, and I'd started writing it a couple of years ago, and then got stuck and a bit lost and a bit scared actually about where I was going with the writing. So I stopped it, I shelved it, put it away in a drawer and left it there. And then when I heard about the Unbound Writing Master classes, I thought that this would be a really good opportunity to get back into that. It'd been sort of, whispering on my shoulder for the last couple of years. When are you going to pick that project up again? And this felt like a really great opportunity to actually dive back into that, but this time not on my own. This time with support and guidance, and and just sort of with more around me to actually make it happen. So I really wanted to commit to it. And what's actually happened for me is even once I'd made that commitment, that's when the magic started happening. So even before we started the group calls and all that kind of thing, the project came back to life. So it was almost like it had been asleep for a while, and then it woke up, and I've sort of been writing that book ever since. To the point that I've now at the stage where I've actually completed a first draft of the manuscript. Still got a bit of tweaking and everything to do, but that's an incredible progress that I've made in a relatively short period of time, given that it had sat idle for 2 years. So I'm really happy with how that's gone.
Absolutely fantastic. And it just shows, like you say, when you make that really clear commitment to writing your book, it can happen relatively quickly. That magic starts to happen, as you said. You spoke there about some of the fears that were coming up around the book when you first started writing on it, that kind of led to you putting it in the drawer and leaving it for a while. Can you speak a little bit more about those fears and kind of any challenges you experienced around writing this book?
Sure. So it was partly to do with the topic area, which is about women's sexuality and women's sexual desire, and partly the style of writing. So up until now, I've had very clear divisions that I was either doing academic writing in my role as a researcher, and that was very formal and had set protocols and all that kind of thing, or I was doing my fictional writing, and that was my free space to write as I wanted. But my new book, Desire Lines, felt like it needed to be somewhere different to those two places. So it needed to be somewhere where it was non-fictional elements with some fiction, without having to write it in an academic way and reference everything I said, and being able to draw on my own experiences rather than research data that I'm used to doing. So partly the fear was just around, I don't know what this is new territory for me. I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know what it's meant to look like. And what I've found is that actually having permission to explore that new territory has, without any pressure, has made the difference for me. So it's enabled me to sort of find my own way through it and find my own balance of all those different elements. And then the other fear was around the topic area. So although I'm a published erotic author, so I've written about sex and sexuality before, it wasn't so much that I didn't want to write about that, but I did want to include some personal accounts, and including my story rather than my made up fictional stories was a new leap. And again, what I found is that being part of this group, and you talked right at the start about it being a brave space where we could explore and we could learn and we could try out different things, sort of using our unbound voice. And so what I've been able to do is actually do that within this group in a protected space, being able to share different aspects with the group when that's felt appropriate, and just really. I think knowing that other people are doing their own thing, so different topics, but also going through some of the same challenges and finding their own way through it. It feels like we're a bit of a warrior tribe, all moving forward at the same time, but in our own unique way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that sense of bravery, having a space where, you can feel there's a sense of safety, but also there's a sense of kind of challenging yourself to be brave as well, in this kind of within this container. So allowing yourself to be brave there, so that the idea is that then it's easier, not quite so challenging when you come to sharing the book with the world. And I love the way I love it. Well, that's another part of the process.
One step at a time.
Exactly. But I love the way you've embraced that, Anna, and I love the way you describe that there. And you spoke there about often challenges that can come with, we can write about a particular subject or a particular issue, and there's almost there can be a sense of detachment around that. It's like, this is fine, I'm writing about an area that I know about and I can write about that. But when it comes to sharing more of our story, particularly certain parts of our story, you're talking about sexuality, that can feel incredibly vulnerable. So what has it been like for you? Obviously you've got to this point where you've kind of got to your first draft of the manuscript. How has that been for you, in terms of sharing elements of your story and finding the courage to do that?
I think the first thing I'd say is that I've really felt the vulnerability. So it's not like I haven't felt vulnerable, like it's felt like such a gentle, it's not felt like such a gentle space that I feel no vulnerability and I can, say whatever I want to say. I've still really felt the vulnerability. But I think the difference that's happened for me is that I've felt compelled to keep moving through it. So whereas before I may have kind of come up against that vulnerability and balked a bit and said, oh, but this is not too personal, but because I wouldn't share anything that I genuinely felt was too personal. But I may have previously felt that nobody wants to read this, or my story isn't that important. And I think what's changed for me this time, and this is partly a reflection on my role as a researcher as well, is that I'm very used to telling other people's stories. That's what I do. I ask people about their stories and then I share them. And there's been something about claiming my space as well and saying, but my story is also important. And if I choose to share it, and if I choose to share it in this way, that's okay. And I have control over that, and I get to, I get to choose. And that's felt really powerful, actually. I think that's been a really important part of this whole process for me, is remembering that my story is as important as anybody else's, and B, that I get choice about what I say and what I don't say, and how I say it and how I don't. So before I thought, oh, it has to either be non-fiction or fiction, and with this book I've actually blended the two, and that was a real surprise for me that they came together in that way, and I really like the way that's worked out as well. So hopefully other people will like it too. But even just writing it for myself at this stage, definitely with a view to publishing, but even at the stage that I've got to now, I think it's been really valuable.
Yeah. And I think actually when we give ourselves permission to share our stories and to honor our own stories in that way, and say, yes, this does have value, this is valid, and it is worth sharing, that kind of gives permission to other people to be able to do the same for themselves. Maybe they won't choose to write about their own story, but it helps them to see the value in their experience and how that's important. And because we do have this tendency, or we can have this tendency, to kind of diminish our own experience and say, oh no, that's not worth kind of highlighting or sharing. So I think that's a really important part of the process.
And one of the things that I try and encourage in the book is self-reflection. So although I'm sharing partly my story and partly fictional stories, ultimately the aim is for the reader to ask herself about her own stories. So even if she never shares them with anyone other than herself, there's something there about the self-awareness and also the self-validation. This is my story.
Yes.
What do I want my story to look like next?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, what you spoke about then, about, you know, you're in control of how you tell your story, and not just in terms of your writing, but like you said, in terms of the stories we tell ourselves about who we are in the world and how we want to be in the world. That's a really empowering point, actually, isn't it? To kind of recognize that. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, I mean, you spoke a little bit about this when you were talking about your process there, but what specifically kind of attracted you about the idea of coming together within this mastermind, within this group, to work on your book? Because obviously, you know, you're a writer and you've written for many years. What made you think, actually, I would like to be part of this group experience?
I think this time round I really wanted a container. You know, I can do it on my own. That's hard work, and it's isolating, and it can be slow. and there was something very attractive about seeing this as a container. 6 months. There would be check-ins. There would be you know, opportunity to share, to make myself accountable if that's what I wanted to do, and also I think there's something there about wanting to be part of the group, actually. So seeing how other people are doing it and what their challenges and achievements are as my own. I think I've definitely learned from other people in the group as well. So when we've had our group coaching sessions, there's always nuggets. Like when anybody asks a question or responds to something, there's always nuggets to be drawn from everybody else's experiences as well. And also I think for myself, because I work from home a lot, there was also just something very practical there about having other people to talk to.
Yeah.
And of course, I love the you know, the Unbound Women archetype really speaks to me as well, particularly around this topic as well.
Absolutely. There's a lot of synchronicities, I think, you know, about what you're writing about, and the kind of principles of living unbound as well, which I love. And I'm getting a real sense of how working within a group, it kind of brings this dynamic quality to our writing and also our process. Like you said, on a group call, someone might say something and it certainly isn't just relevant to that person. There's always kind of bits and pieces that we can take, and that, you know, I can take as well as a kind of holder of the space. I'm learning all the time through this experience.
And right at the start, before I signed up, I think I actually asked you about it, because one of the things that I'd experienced with other online groups is that I could get overwhelmed quite quickly by everybody else's process. So if there was a lot of sharing or expectation around being very active within a group, I sort of felt a bit of an obligation to always, you know, to respond to everybody's posts and that kind of thing. And I've not felt that at all with this group. It's felt much more intuitive about when people post and what they share and what they ask for. And I think everybody's been very considerate of the fact that our main aim is to write. And so if we take too much time away from the actual writing, we don't get the writing done. And so it feels that there's been like a very, very lovely sort of organic balance there between how much, and similarly with the amount of content. I've never felt overwhelmed, but I've always felt like there was something there if I needed it and I could ask for.
Oh, fantastic. That's really good. That's really good to hear. Thank you, Hannah. That was certainly my intention with the group, and is my intention with the next round as well, is to, the idea is that it is definitely spacious. It's it's supportive, but also there's this space because, it's a creative process. And, we've noticed this throughout this first round. There's been ebbs and flows, and times when people have been more active and like really actively writing, and other times where people have been like, actually, there's nothing coming through at the moment. But, being held within that space is still really powerful. So tell us a little bit more about your vision for the book, particularly now you're at this stage where, you've finished the first manuscript, really thinking about how you're going to be sharing it with the world. What vision do you have for Desire Lines?
Well, the next step for me, obviously, is finalising the manuscript and then thinking about publication. And alongside that, I've just set up my own website, sansom.com, where I want to share some of the writing there. So there's a blog, but there's also a page dedicated to Desire Lines, and to be able to share and interact with my audience there. And the other thing that I'm finding really exciting just now, not to jump the gun, but I've actually got an idea for a follow-on book from Desire Lines, and I really want that to be a co-creation with my readers. So I'm very excited by this. So that's on that website as well. So what I want to do is really sort of start a conversation and to collaborate and co-create on the next piece. So it's kind of moving on from my stories and the fictional stories to then bringing in other people's stories again, but without losing track of where I started from. And it's expanding the topic as well. So it's moving on from our bodies as a sort of a site of our sexuality to our bodies as a site of nature, and sort of bringing in the wider world, the wider natural world, and how we mirror that with our sexuality as well as the other ways that we go through life.
Goodness, so interesting. I remember when I spoke to you, right, when you were thinking about joining the mastermind originally, Anna, and I was just so excited, like could just feel this sense of excitement physically in my body about your work and Desire Lines. And I feel exactly the same now you're talking about the next book. And I just want to say this is something that I think very often can happen. We allow ourselves to commit to the book that's wanting to come through right now, but that kind of clears the way for what's next, and it becomes this very kind of organic unfolding process where what's next will emerge, and we can just go with that. There's no kind of right, I'm going to sit down now and think about what I want to do next. It just happens very naturally. And I love the idea of it being this co-creation. When I had a look on your website and saw the page for the next book and saw that, it's like, oh my goodness. So a really unbound way of doing things, which is fantastic. So Anna, the best place for people to find out more about your work and Desire Lines and whatever's coming next as well, is that to go to your website?
Yep, so it's sansom.com. And there's a sign up form there, and also a contact form. So if anybody's got any questions that they want to, or any reflections, or they just want to get in touch or say hello, that would be wonderful.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Anna. We'll put the link to your website below this video so people can easily find their way to you. And it's been such an honour and a joy to work with you and to continue working with you. The current round of the mastermind hasn't finished yet, so thank you for being part of it, and thank you for sharing about your process today.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
Bye.